Okay. I don't know how to start this video. I'm sure you can guess based on what the title says to know what it's going to be about, but I didn't want to have to make this video. It's more like I have to, because if I don't say something or do something, then someone else might get hurt, and I don't want anyone to go through what I went through. Which is why I wanted to settle things privately with her, but she was all about just putting it out there and making it public. And so I'm putting it out there and I'm making it public, and I'm telling the true story of what happened between me and the artist MarieJaneWorks. So let's get started. Those of you who have been watching my channel since January know that I was working with an artist on an online novel that I wrote that told an original story using miraculous ladybug characters. And this story was called Look What We've Become. Look What We've Become had a lot of things that were real in it. That's why that story and all of my stories were so precious to me, because they literally came from me. But during the time that I was writing this story, I was also doing comic dubs on YouTube. And since I was dubbing Miraculous Ladybug comics, I got the idea that, hey, maybe I should try asking someone, anyone, to see if they'd be interested in turning my story into a comic. So I put a notice on the site that the story was posted on. Then I got an email from MarieJaneWorks. She told me that she was a big fan of my story and thought that it was a beautiful piece of fiction and wanted to ask how much I was willing to pay the artist. I told her I couldn't pay anyone. I'm a working college student with a lot to take care of. I couldn't afford an artist. So I made the offer to monetize the videos on YouTube so that we could split the profits 50-50. She agreed to this. I'll post screenshots of the conversation on the side. And then she put together a contract for our partnership, because we had talked about turning the comic into an original and selling it at cons and stuff. So here is the contract, both sides, stating that any profits that we made from the comic would be split 50-50. That we needed to give each other credit if we were going to post the pages anywhere on any site, and letting people know what our roles were in this project. She was just the artist, I was the author. And it also states that it would be illustrated PG-13. And everything was going pretty well until she messaged me in the summer saying that she wanted to talk about changing up our original agreement. Even though I was a writer and the person who came up with turning this comic into a comic, the person who pitched the comic dub idea, because she admitted that she had no clue comic dubs were so popular. And even though she was just hired to illustrate it, she told me she wanted to change the percentage. Instead of 50-50, she said she wanted 90%, and that I only deserved 10%. So when I said no, that I wasn't going to give her 90% for a story that she didn't write, for an idea she didn't come up with, she tried to trick me into signing a new contract. She said that our original contract had expired. What? But when I asked her about this undiscussed expiration date that she never told me about, she decided to ignore that question. So I reviewed the contract. I didn't find an expiration date. I took it to my mother's attorney, and he found nothing like an expiration date on that contract. That's because there wasn't one. After I questioned the expiration date, she started throwing in all these other reasons as to why she deserved 90%. And I listened because I wanted to hear her out.
Her reasons were that she was working on the art alone, even though she was made aware that she would be working on the illustrations alone. And she signed her contract knowing that. So that canceled out. Another reason was that she was working under deadlines, even though she was told many times that she didn't have to work under any deadlines, but still created a 2-week deadline on her own. So that was her choice. And again, another reason that was canceled out. The editing on Webtoon was another reason that she added, but that was all her because it was on her account. I couldn't help her or assist her in that aspect of the comic because she wouldn't let me, even though she was made aware that I was fairly experienced in the editing field. So again, her choice, and another reason that was canceled out. Then she sent this, saying that she deserved more money because she was working on the paneling, colors, ink, lettering, and formatting alone. Yeah, because you were hired to do that. All of this fell in with the creation of the comic that she was hired and signed to do at a 50-50 profiting deal. She was aware that she was going to be doing all of that alone, so those reasons canceled out. And as for coloring especially, I told her I was okay with the black and white version because unlike her, I always stuck to what was put in our original agreement. But she chose to add some color in. Character design was another one, even though she came to me several times asking how I wanted each character to look, because it had to follow the style of my story. And I had to remind her several times that the male lead had to have long hair, because she was considering giving him short hair. She came to me about how the female lead should look, how her hair should look, how her new love interest should look. The switch with Nathaniel for Luca was all me, my idea, because I pitched it and because I was the only one allowed to make big changes, like changing characters in the story because the project was mine. I was in charge, so her reasoning for character design was canceled out. Then there was the storyboards issue, but she never asked me to help her with storyboards. Even when I had one ready for a special chapter we talked about, she never let me help her with any of the storyboards because she thought I lacked experience. And she signed to do this alone anyway when she agreed to create the comic at a 50-50 profiting deal. Her choice, and another reason that was canceled out. Then she mentioned thumbnails was another, even though I sent her 2 edited photos that I was going to use as thumbnails for the videos and for the music cover so that she would know that I was pretty good at editing. But she never asked me or hinted that she needed help with the thumbnails. Because she didn't, because she wanted to do it alone, so that excuse canceled out. And then the dialogue. She complained that she deserved more money because the dialogue was all her. But the dialogue was a copy and paste of my written work. Sometimes she would add a line in, sometimes she would change a word or two, but it was a copy and paste because they were all my words. Plus, I even asked her to let me know beforehand what she was planning to put in the dialogue of the comic because I wanted to take control of the writing aspect of this project. And she said she would let me know because she didn't want to change the style of my writing, but then she never let me know and kept doing it on her own. So that excuse canceled out. And then plot adaptation. That was the only reason I considered giving her 5% more. Even though she didn't deserve it because she was aware she would be doing this alone, but she didn't accept 5% more because she wanted 90%. Even though she violated the contract from the beginning when she decided to turn the comic into a mature comic after she signed to create it as a PG-13 piece. Then she decided to add color in, going back on what we signed. She also didn't credit me as the author several times, which she signed to do, so again, she was the only one who violated our agreement.
But what does she keep doing? She lies. She lies and tells me that I violated the contract. She said I violated the contract because I hadn't sent her money in 4 months and that made the contract no longer valid. Except the contract stated I had to send her money on the go, not every month. Plus, I gave her more money than what she originally asked me for so that I would be covered for a year. She originally asked me to send her money through her Patreon account as donations because she was willing to work on my comic for free and then suggested maybe I donate to her. Even the smallest amount of money would help her. So I donated to her and she told me to send her money on Patreon, like even the smallest amount, like $1 a month, $3 a month, I think was her lowest one. And that would have equated to her earning about $16 to $48 during our entire partnership if I had done it on Patreon. But I didn't. Instead, I sent her larger amounts so that I would be covered for a year. What originally should have been $48 out of our entire partnership instead equated to 181 Canadian dollars. That's how much I sent her because she is Canadian. So I discussed that with my attorney, and legally speaking, I didn't violate the contract. And she knows this. She just wanted more money. But I tried to reason with her. I wanted to hear her out because I considered her a friend at the time. I was willing to give her 5% more even though she didn't deserve it, and that she was considering giving me 0% because my contribution to the project was so small. She said like it was minuscule or something, even though my contribution was the story itself. The idea of creating this comic was me. And then she wanted to give me 0% for arguing with her about this, just because she had access to the Webtoons account and I didn't. So I couldn't even control anything on that side. She was just really money hungry, that she was willing to break her contract and steal everything from me. So even though I gave her all that money for the pages that she sent me, she told me that I could not keep the pages if I was not going to sign that new contract. Even though I had already paid for those pages, she had accepted my money and spent the money, but instead she said that if I wanted to keep those pages, I would have to send her $12,000. Over $12,000. Because that's how much it would have equated to if she had charged me by the hour like she normally does with her other clients. But that wasn't what I signed for, and not what I was made aware of. And it's funny how she decided to tell me this a year into already promoting the story with people already reading it, and she's deciding in the middle of this to tell me that I owe her $12,000 if I want to keep the pages. No, that's not okay. And she had no way of proving that she worked that amount of hours anyway. So when I said no, she said she was going to take all of the pages after accepting and spending all the money I sent her, alter the dialogue, and post the comic as her own, under her name. When I said she couldn't do this because it's plagiarism, and it's plagiarizing my work, because the entire comic was a project that I hired her to create and illustrate for me and my channel. When I told her this, she said I was wrong, that taking the comic wasn't plagiarism, and claiming it as her own wasn't plagiarism, and that she didn't need my permission because the comic was in the public domain. But let me share some knowledge with you guys in case you're ever put in this situation. The public domain does not apply to anything you find on the internet. If that were true, I could have taken her art, altered it a bit, and sold it as my own, like she did with my story. But I can't do that because the public domain falls under any pieces that are not subject to copyright. But not only is my story copyrighted legally as an original, it's also copyrighted as the version that people read on the site it was posted on. You see, I could do that under the correct genre. Yes, it was on a fan fiction site, but it's not categorized as fan fiction. Now she has the comic she has the comic now as a parody, but legally speaking, like in a courtroom, her comic doesn't pass as a parody because it doesn't have the required elements to make it a parody, which is why mine isn't a parody. It's under the correct genre that she doesn't seem to be aware of. So she took my comic, all my ideas, like adding cameos, because I told her I wanted to add myself in the comic. It was always something I wanted to do if I ever had a comic. I told her I wanted to add myself in the comic, reading the comic book, Look What We've Become. She told me, well, you can't do that because no one's gonna know it's you. So she put herself in the comic instead. And she's still doing that to this day, not crediting me for any of that, even though she never thought of that on her own, and she had no intention of ever doing that before I even told her. So I didn't know what to do. She was posting my comic on Webtoons without my permission, and I was doubting myself when I shouldn't have been, because she was trying to get me to doubt myself. Which is what I'm going to educate some of you on, is called gaslighting. That's when an individual plants seeds of doubt into someone else's mind as a way to manipulate them into questioning their own sanity. But anyway, I contacted this family acquaintance of mine that works at Warner Brothers, and they were very helpful. They passed me to someone in the copyright department at Warner Brothers, and they talked to one of the higher ups, and they advised me to send this woman a cease and desist letter. So I sent her a cease and desist letter, and I wrote it myself. And just to educate anyone on this in case you ever want to do this, a cease and desist letter is a letter that you send to someone who is participating in some kind of illegal or criminal activity, and the letter is to make them aware that they have been caught, and if that they do not cease and desist, stop what they're doing, they will most likely have to face legal consequences. It's pretty much a warning. It's not something you have to do. It's something that I just wanted to because I didn't want to take this legally and just spring it out on her. I thought of her as a friend and I didn't want to hurt her that way. So I sent her that warning. And she sent me this. So she told me that, and I went and got a letter from my mother's attorney. Even though you don't have to have an attorney write a cease and desist letter for you, you can legally write one yourself and send it to someone. But she said she wanted one from an attorney. And I thought, okay, she's not going to take me seriously if I don't get one from an attorney. So it ended up costing me $350, which is a pretty low price compared to how much he charges people normally. But it was still a lot of money. But I spent it because she said she wanted it, and I thought that she was not going to stop unless I sent it to her. So even though I didn't need to get one from an attorney, and she knew this, she just didn't think that I would go through with it. And when I did, she completely insulted him. I felt so bad that he had to deal with this very disrespectful woman. She insulted his grammar, accused him, a licensed attorney, of fraud, and threatened to sue me for pain and suffering for sending the letter if I didn't apologize to her in 10 days. I didn't apologize. I didn't have any reason to. Then she posted this, stating that she was harassed, telling people she had 4 episodes already ready, even though she told my attorney that she had no intention of continuing the comic at all. So then how could you have 4 episodes ready? She also lied to him and said that you could not find the pages that she made for me anywhere online. And that same day, it was still on her website. Anyway, I gave Webtoons all this evidence because they are very strict and they need a lot of proof when it comes to copyright infringement. So I gave them all this evidence. They gave her 14 days to prove that I was lying and that the comic was 100% hers like she claimed it was, because she was so confident that she could get away with it because it wasn't plagiarizing my work at all. 14 days passed, the comic stayed down. So she decided to make another version of my comic. Now, she said that she made this new version because one of the writers got salty and reported her because she fired me, even though she never hired me. She was the only person that was hired. And she knows this, but she just didn't want to admit the truth that she was caught stealing from me and had to redo the entire comic because she was caught lying. So she redid it. But then she stated that the comic was going to be better, which goes against it being a completely different story, because if it was a completely different story, you wouldn't be able to compare it to any other work. If it was actually different from mine, that's like saying Harry Potter is better than Hunger Games. You can't compare the two. They're completely different stories. So the fact that you're saying yours is better means that you're already comparing it to a version that already exists. But if you don't want to take my word on that, she also said that the comic was going to be rebooted. But if it's a new story, then how could it be rebooted? Because a reboot means to produce a distinctly new version of something that already exists. But then she denies that this is a new version of my story, because when someone commented that they were here for the old version, my version, she said, "What old version?" Trying to play it off like there was no other version but this version, but you're calling it a reboot. She also said that the comic was moved, but how could it be moved if it's a new story? How could it be moved if it's a completely different story? Again, that's because she's admitting that it isn't. By definition, at least. She also told me that she wouldn't tell anyone about the situation between us, that she would say that we split ways due to technical difficulties, which doesn't make sense, but based on this comment, it was brought to my attention that she's been sharing more than what she was supposed to, slandering my reputation and my name. This commenter, this person, was under the impression that Mary Jane had sent me $200 because I apparently asked Mary Jane for a large amount of money, and that we negotiated and settled at $200 for her to continue the comic, and that I conned her. But I never asked her for any money. She knows this. I never accepted any money from her. She tried to send me $190 as a thanks for my consultancy on the project when I told her she didn't have permission to continue it. But I wasn't even a consultant, I was the creator. So I didn't accept it. And she knows this. So again, how could I scam anyone if I'm the only one that lost money? If I'm the only one being talked about in a way that I shouldn't be talked about and don't want to be talked about? And that this person said that I pressed charges or something out of the blue a month later, even though Mary Jane knew the reason this happened a month later was because I was in Japan that month. So I couldn't communicate with her whenever I wanted because I had very little access to the internet. Why Mary Jane didn't let people know about this is just very sneaky. And that's because Mary Jane is an opportunist. She sees an opportunity and she takes advantage of it if she knows it's going to benefit her financially, or if it means it's going to better herself in the industry, because she is that money driven. This account, Black Cat, tried to ask the commenter where she got this information from. The commenter admitted that Mary Jane had said it and had proof of Mary Jane saying this, but wouldn't release that proof without Mary Jane's permission. So when Mary Jane messaged the account Black Cat, she refused to let the commenter give this account the evidence. But I mean, if Mary Jane really didn't scam me, what does she have to hide? She also admits to this account that she didn't change the story completely, that she changed just enough to pass it off as her own, which is illegal because I can't just change enough of Harry Potter to make it my own. I can't change just enough of Hunger Games to make it my own. And then she said it was cringe for this account to call me the original creator. But what's really cringy is Mary Jane's deceitfulness. I was also sent this the other day by someone who knew nothing about the situation between me and Mary Jane. And he had her admit that she did talk about the situation a bit on some posts on Instagram, completely going back on what she told me she was going to do when she said that she was only going to tell people that we split up due to technical difficulties, and we didn't split up. She tried to run off with my work. Now, this person messaged Mary Jane and got this evidence because he was questioning this post that she put up on her story or whatever on Instagram, where she said, I took advantage of her free labor, but it wasn't free. I paid her. She was willing to do it for free. She also said in this post that I told her she was nothing without my stories or without me or something. But that was the biggest complete lie she ever told on social media about me, because I never told her that. She was the one who told me that readers weren't reading the comic because of my story. She said that they were only reading it because of her consistency, that it was only getting popular because she had this schedule and she was being consistent about it, and that's the only reason people were reading the comic, not because of my story. But I know comics that go on hiatus for years and they are still super popular. The fact that you're saying that they were reading it had nothing to do with my story was the biggest insult she told me, especially as her client who hired her for this project. So to be clear, she said that the only reason people were reading this comic was because of her and her work, not me, not my story. I have proof. She doesn't. And that's because I never told her she was nothing without me. I never said anything like, hey MJ, you're gonna be nothing without my stories, you're nothing without... I never said that. She was the only one that said anything similar to that. Then she calls me crazy, and it's like, I think she needs to reevaluate her own sanity before she calls me any more names. She also blamed me for the no collabs thing, even though she told me from day one that she was always going to charge writers. So I don't know why she's telling people that I had something to do with that. And it sucks because this all went down during the time when I was close to turning 21. She put me through hell on my birthday. All I was focusing on was saving money, how I was going to pay something off because of all the money that I spent on, you know, that cease and desist letter. So I was financially struggling because of her on my birthday. And all I did for her on her birthday was be a good friend. I sent her a donation. She always thanked me for boosting her spirits during times when she fell down. And all she did was ruin my birthday, ruin my vacation, my month away in Japan. Then prove she never saw me as a friend, because I had told her a lot about my struggles growing up and my current struggles at the moment. But when we were talking about the 90% and the contract issues and how I wasn't going to give her 90%, she was like, well, if you want to make this a competition about who has it worse or something like that. I was like, this is a conversation about our contract, about our business problem. Why are you throwing personal stuff that I told you into my face like that. I told you that as a friend, and it just showed that she never saw me as a friend. Because friends don't do that kind of stuff. They don't see your struggles as some kind of competition. I never saw it as, oh, well, I have this worse. Or, no, that's not what friends do. It just shows that she was not a good friend. And I hope that she is not like this with her other friends, or thinks this way with her other friends either. But I thought it was odd too that this happened when the comic was close to hitting 10K subscribers, because that was her goal, because she wanted to be a featured artist. But I thought it was odd, especially when she would go behind my back and tell her followers she was considering dropping the comic if it wasn't going to get her enough support financially, popularity wise. She would never tell me this though. She would never tell me that she was considering dropping the comic at any time, even though I was her client. But she was okay with telling all of her followers about this. That's not something you do with your client. If you have any kind of hesitance or you're considering backing out, you need to let your client know. You shouldn't be telling all of your followers about this, especially because, you know, this comic helped her get so many more followers, and people were reading that comic and going and following her. When people would ask me about the comic, I would always tell them, go follow her. And then she tried to make it sound like I was acting entitled or something. I mean, I don't consider myself entitled, but when you hire someone to create a comic for you and they think that they have the right to do whatever they want with that piece, that's making yourself entitled. There was times when she would just, you know, refer to it as her comic, even though it was a comic that I hired you to create. Yes, she called it a collaboration because it was my story and her art. But at the end of the day, she was the only one getting paid. I wasn't getting paid anything. I was in charge of the project. I was her client who was telling her how I wanted everything to look, because it was my comic. It was just super unprofessional of her to say as a hired artist. So point blank, she used me. She told me she didn't, but I have proof of her admitting to a complete stranger that she did. That my story was just a test run for her, which is funny because she never mentioned this to me. That's because she didn't want me to know. And these are all her words. I'm not making this up. I can't make up evidence. In the contract, it even said that this was just a fun thing that we were going to do together, but ended it because of a money issue, even though she originally was willing to do the comic for free. But I wasn't getting any money. I was just spending and spending on her. I didn't get any big percentage on a story that I wrote. And there were always these big red flags, like when she stopped tagging me in posts on her Instagram that were promoting the pages. She stopped tagging me as the writer of the comic and referred to it as just her comic. And then so many times she would claim to be the author, especially in this comment where she claimed to be the author and then someone corrected her, and then she said that she had permission to do that, that I gave her permission to call herself the author, when I never did. She's admitting that she got tired of correcting people, even though we both signed the contract stating that she had to credit me if she wanted to post pages anywhere. We both had to. But she just kept referring to herself as the author. And then another red flag, which always bothered me, was when she would when she would go off on my readers, the people that originally read the story as a novel version. When they would leave spoilers in the comment section, she would go off on them. Like, she would get so mad. And I was always torn between who to side with. Like, my readers have been supporting this project forever, but then this person who I thought was my friend and this person who I'm working with, like, how am I supposed to choose between? So I would kind of just stay out of it. And I felt so bad because I always wanted to defend my readers because they were just there to show their support. And I am so sorry that I could not defend you guys there. Anyway, sorry. So she would go off on them for giving away spoilers, but it wasn't even their fault. And that really upset me because they would come to show their support, and she would get so angry because she wanted everything to be a surprise. But it was a comic version of a novel that already existed online. Spoilers couldn't be avoided. And she knew this. So that was just a very ugly side of her character that always upset me. And I never said anything because I didn't want to upset her. But one thing that really upset me, that really was like a stab in the back, when she went behind my back and tried to convince this VA, this voice actress, who I'm sure you all know, her name is Joey Cat on YouTube. She's a very nice person, total sweetheart. She was a VA that I told Mary Jane about at the beginning of our partnership, because I met Joey during the beginning of my channel when I didn't know what I was doing with my channel, and she was the first person I ever did a collab with. So I met Joey at the time when my channel was barely starting off, and she was always such a sweetheart and so nice to me when my channel was nothing. So I told Mary Jane I wanted Joey in this project because, well, in this comic dub, because she was super talented. But when the project ended, I had this bad feeling that MJ would try to ask her to take over. So I listened to this feeling and I messaged Joey, and I was right. MJ had asked Joey to take over the project, but Joey declined the offer because Mary Jane wanted the comic dub to be monetized, and Joey doesn't monetize comic dubs. So Mary Jane left and I guess found someone else to do it. But again, it was the reason she left because she was that money driven. Now, I also want to make this clear that this video isn't slander. I know that she's real quick to threaten people with that term, but this isn't slander. It's a review of my experience as her client, and I have every right to do this video because I have factual evidence to back me up. So I should warn you that if you attempt to falsely report this video for slander, that it will have legal consequences. Because again, I was her client. She was not mine. So anything that she might say that contradicts anything that's said in this video is a complete lie. Because as I've shown you, she is capable of doing that without a guilty conscience. But I'm not telling people to take sides. If you want to take her side and be biased about it, I'm not going to stop you. I'm not going to judge you. You can go ahead. But if you're going to side with her because you think that she's better than me or something, because someone said that in a review on the site that the story was posted on, and they left this review on a very controversial chapter that is in the story, because again, the story is based off of real stuff. But just to be clear, the story was never going to have a happy ending. People were very upset about this chapter because they thought that the story was going to have a happy ending and they were going to live happily ever after. They were not. Big spoiler for that story. That story does not have a happy ending. If I ever decide to post the ending, I will. The reason I never posted the ending was because she told me not to post the ending just yet. She wanted the ending of my chapter to fall with the ending of the comic. She knows that she said this. She should not try to deny it. But now no one's ever going to see that ending most likely on this site because I don't want her to steal any more of my ideas. So anyway, this person left a review on this controversial chapter after they were cyberbullying me because of Mary Jane's. And I have a feeling I know who this person is too, because they had access to both of my accounts, because I have two accounts in there, and that can't be possible unless someone told you the other account. So I have a feeling I know who this person is, but I'm not going to say who it is. So they left a review and they were saying that Mary Jane was better than me or something because she didn't write a chapter like that, and that her comic was going to be better because it doesn't have a chapter like that on there. And then to me, I ended up rewriting that chapter to appeal to readers that were, you know, not too happy with it. I ended up changing it because I took my readers' thoughts into consideration. Mary Jane didn't. I told her that readers were going to be upset about this chapter, and she wanted that chapter in the comic. So if you're going to side with her because you think that she doesn't agree with a chapter like that, then you're being hypocritical. Just because she wanted that chapter in the comic, when I told her people were going to be upset about it, she tried to change it a bit, but it still had the same ending result that that reviewer was upset about. So again, don't be a hypocrite about it if you want to side with her. I also hope her friends and her family like call her out on her wrongdoings, just because me and my family were not super close. I'm not going to lie and say, oh, we're all buddy-buddy, but they will call me out when I'm wrong. They will defend me when I'm right. They will not side with me if I am in the wrong about something, as it should be. That is how I humbled myself. I have people who let me know when I'm right and when I'm wrong. And my older sister, she was the one that reviewed all my emails with Mary Jane. She reviewed the contract, and she will not side with me if I'm in the wrong, but she sided with me because she was like, she read everything and she was like, this woman, she scammed you. You're dumb for trusting someone in a different country because you know that that's obviously not smart, and you're dumb for giving her money. But this woman scammed you. She broke her contract. You have proof of it. You did not violate it in any way. And she knows this. I am not in the wrong in the situation. She is. And so I hope someone that watches this will call her out on it if they really care about her. And the whole situation was just super upsetting, especially because She said I didn't know who I was because I had 2 different usernames, even though she isn't even happy with her username. But the reason I have 2 different usernames is because the username I have for the story account that I have is a username I created in high school. Jam Jam was a channel that I started running when I graduated, after I graduated. And this channel didn't just go as Jam Jam originally. It went through several different names, and Tokyo Doll was one of them. I have 2 different usernames, yeah, one for writing and then one for YouTube. But I'm the same person, I'm Jam Jam, and I am not confused about who I am. So don't tell me I don't know who I am just because you're not happy with how your public name came to be. But honestly, she is just a copycat. I know that sounds immature, but it's true. She stole my ideas, she stole my story, the comic dub idea, she stole my money, and then said she'd have the last laugh on social media, which I don't know what you find humorous about scamming someone. She copied me when I said that writers get taken advantage of. When it comes to like a writer and an artist working together and they make a comic, the artist always gets the attention. And when I told her, you know, she was taking advantage of me because, you know, I'm the writer and she wasn't promoting me as much as she should have been when I was always promoting her. And then she tried to play the victim and then used what I said and said, artists are the ones that get taken advantage of and that I took advantage of her. Just trying to copy everything that I said and even use the hashtag don't take advantage of artists. She was like, no, artists get taken advantage of in the industry and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, we're not even in the industry. We're talking about our agreement and you're taking advantage of me. And even the baby thing, I used to always refer to my stories as my babies because they came from me. They came from my brain. They're all my ideas, my creations. And I spent a long amount of time working on them. And then she used that in one of her posts and said that this comic was her baby. And I'm like, no. If anything, you were like the nanny because I hired you to help me bring this comic to life and you just took it. You took advantage of me. But again, she is an opportunist because she never even told me about the money that you could earn on Webtoon. She didn't tell me that featured artists could earn $2,000 a month on Webtoon. She never told me this. She told me that there was a possibility that you could earn money through ads, but she never told me about the $2,000 because she didn't want me to know. And yes, posting the comic on Webtoons was her idea. I will admit that. But she didn't post it on her own. She posted it after getting my permission because, again, it was my comic. She needed my permission to put it up there. And when she told me she was going to put it up there, she told me the only reason she was doing it was to get the comic attention because she was a not-so-well-known creator. And there was always all this stuff that she was talking about. She would always badmouth herself, you know, talking about how she needs to work on her art more, and she was like always insecure about it. And then she referred to herself as a shit writer and even asked me to help her write a story for her. She was just very insecure. And so I understood to an extent why she scammed me. But yeah, then this person, the commenter, mentioned that they work for Thomas. So if she is working for Thomas, I hope that she is more cautious about what she posts on the internet, and to make sure that if you're going to accuse anyone of scamming anyone, that you make sure that you're not actually siding with an actual scam artist. Especially because I didn't get anything from this project. All I did was get a broke fake account. So just be cautious if you ever plan to hire this artist. I'm not saying you shouldn't hire her. She clearly loves what she does, whatever it is that she does. Just be careful because she is capable of scamming you and manipulating the situation, and will even tell you these awful things. Like, she told me I mistook my place in this project because she made it out like she was the only one that could call the shots. She was like, you could give me ideas, but it's all up to me in the end, or something like that. Even though she knows that's a lie, she only said that right toward the end of our partnership when she tried to run off with everything. And she said that because she wanted to, again, plant seeds of doubt in my head. But she could never call the shots. She was never allowed to call all the shots. And she knew this. That's why she always had to ask me for permission for stuff, talk to me about how I wanted the characters to look. And she had to do this because I was in charge. I hired her. She didn't. She told people she fired me, but she never hired me. And if she did, then she owes me a lot of money. But I was never hired. She was hired to illustrate my comic, and then stole everything from me when I refused to give her more money and a bigger percentage. So just be careful. I don't know when I'll be back at this point in my life. on YouTube. I could be back tomorrow, next week, a month, a year. I don't know. I had all these comic dubs that I wanted to put on the channel and so many other video ideas I wanted to put up on this channel. But I'm really just trying to take a break right now after going through all of this and this awful situation that this woman put me through. She cost me a lot of money and had me spend $350 on a letter that she wasn't even going to take seriously. And this isn't over yet either, legally. But I won't get too into that, so. I will say that if I do come back, especially as a writer, I'm also going to try to produce my own comics in the future. So I've been trying to learn how to draw, and after 38 days straight of practicing how to draw, I was able to produce things like this. And so I'm trying to get into art, but I know that art, you know, it's a skill, just like any skill, anyone can learn it. That's a fact. It's just like learning a language, learning your alphabet as a kid. It takes years of practice. Some people can pick it up a little quicker than others, but I know it's going to take me a long time. I've been just teaching myself. I might take a few art classes, but I've only been practicing like angles. But again, thank you so much for watching this video. If you've been supporting this channel for a long time, thank you so much. Thank you to everyone that's been so supportive, even those that knew nothing about the situation and were still supportive. Like this person sent me this message on the site and I was just so happy to hear that. So thank you to everyone. Thank you to the people at Warner Brothers who were able to help me with this situation as well. Thank you to Webtoons, and I want to apologize to the people on Webtoons too for having to go through this awful situation. To my readers who were let down because of this woman. I never thought I would ever have to make this video. Never thought that my project would end this way, especially after everything that I did for her. I worked so hard on everything, guys, to make the project so professional. I hired voice actors, a whole cast of voice actors, music composers, an animator. I had so many people set to work on this project, and I was working so hard day and night to the point where I ended up having to go to the hospital because I was like going through so much pain. My hand was just not functioning properly. They said that I showed signs of carpal tunnel. And so my hand's never going to be the same again. Even now when I'm writing, I have to take breaks because it hurts too much. And that sucks. So all because of this woman. She just, it was just awful what she put me through. There's so much more to this story that I could say and so much I want to share. But I don't want to keep dragging this out on social media because this is months of her talking about me, and this is one video that I'm doing about her. And that's all I have to say about this. Again, thank you so much to everyone that's watched this video. Thank you so much to the people that have just been here since day one and stayed subscribed to this channel since day one. So I won't say goodbye, but until we meet again, stay toasty.